Practice makes perfect by Neon Zangetsu, Chapter 7. Just a little understanding. Remember, John, you're stronger than you know, so exercise a bit of restraint. It's all about balance. You see, too much and people will think you're a pushover. Too little and they'll be afraid of you. Was that how it was for you, Dad, before you met Mom? Nope, not even close. When I was a boy, I was the village laughingstock, an outcast and a pariah, weak as can be. Every bit of strength you see now, it came from training, years and years and years of it. I cut my teeth in battles and wars you can't even begin to imagine. Because I had things to protect, that's where true strength comes from, you see. Find something to fight for, son, or better yet, someone, father and son. Just a little understanding. Beacon was a hot mess. Make no mistake, John had absolutely no problems with his team. Really, they were great. Pyra was the sweetest girl he'd ever met, and he was sure Mom would have a thing or two to say about her. Nora had the stamina to rival his own, and Ren was, well, Ren, absolutely the definition of emotional zen, that one. Nothing seemed to bother him. Any teething problems they might have suffered had yet to emerge. If anything, the trio seemed happy to defer to him. Their trust was humbling, and he'd sworn not to let them down. Unfortunately, things began to snowball from there, for while Team Juniper was nothing short of grand, their classes were not. From what he'd seen thus far, their teachers ranged from the insane to the inane. First came history with Professor Oobleck, a wild chatterbox of a man who talked far too fast and drank entirely too much coffee. Next was Miss Goodwitch, a terrifying woman whom John swore could have passed for one of his sisters, and looked like she had a temper to boot, but was terrifying all the same. At least he assumed she was. He'd only seen her briefly at initiation and not had classes with her yet. She didn't seem like the sort to take any nonsense lying down. But then came the true horror, for you see, now they had Professor Port, a rather stout fellow whose sole talent seemed to be telling stories. Wild, convoluted fables that didn't make a lick of sense. He was still talking now, just droning on and on and on about Grim and cabbages, something about a shoe and a bucket. Why was there a bucket? What purpose did the bucket serve? With each passing moment, John felt his brain fizzle out in his head. He'd given up trying to understand him long ago. Now he was just trying to endure. Surely Goodwitch couldn't be this bad. Anything was better than this mind-numbing horror. A cursory glance at his team confirmed they were suffering the same fate as he. Nora had surrendered to the sweet embrace of sleep ages ago. How she'd managed to do so with her eyes open, he'd never know. Ren was staring into space with a vacant expression, hand gone slack on the table. Even Pyro's signature smile had become decidedly strained as she struggled to make sense of ceaseless diatribe pouring from Port's mouth. In short, utter torture. On the level below them, Team Ruby wasn't faring much better. Ruby looked too skittish, a crude caricature of Port, while Reese seethed at her. Blake's head lay buried in a book. Yang's right eye had begun to twitch of its own accord, promising a short and sharp burst of violence if someone didn't extricate her from this class soon. John buried his head in his hand and prayed for an end to his suffering. Uncle Kerma, you there? What's that? The fox blinked away in the back of his head. Need something? Could you knock me out? Please, this is torture. Is that old fool still prattling on? Yes. John's forehead kissed his desk with a muffled groan. He won't stop. Didn't notice. A muffled laughter greeted him. I fell asleep an hour ago, honestly. I thought watching over you would be more entertaining. Traitor. And then, Port was still blathering on, I beat the beowulf to death with a head of cabbage. How did you kill a grim with a cabbage? I've seen stranger, his erstwhile ally snorted. Remind me to tell you about the time your mother broke Inner's snake with her bare hands. Really, that doesn't sound pretty commonplace. That sounds pretty commonplace for our family. While she was pregnant with you. Despite his own inner irritation, John found himself smiling. See, now that was a story he'd actually like to hear. Uncle Kerma's stories were the best, outranked only by Dad's. Mom took a second took a close second, if only because her tales involved more intimate bits bits than he'd like to hear. Just thinking of it left him flustered. Irk. Was it warm in here, or was it just him? Paro's elbow nudged him under the table. John turned bleary blue eyes on her, praying for salvation. Only a few more minutes now. She granted him a small smile. Stay strong. He failed to match it. I'm trying. To think he'd come to begin bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, yet the longer Port droned on, the more he wondered if leaving hadn't been a terrible mistake. Was the man's voice a semblance? It had to be. How else could you weaponize boredom? Even Dad would be hard-pressed to deal with such a foe. A commotion to the right drew his attention. He turned in time to catch Weiss hiss something at Ruby. Whatever it was had the younger girl quailing. His temper already frayed, sparked. Why are they still fighting? Teammates shouldn't get along. Softy. Maybe so, but if he had to hear one more word from Port, his head was going to explode. And then Port went and pushed him over the edge. A true huntsman must be honorable, the mustached man boomed out suddenly, startling him. A true huntsman must be dependable. John's head snapped towards the man in question. For some reason, it felt like those words were directed at him. He couldn't say why. Only that Port's proclamation stabbed at him. Perhaps that was his own guilt gnawing at him. There had been no honor in the way he'd slipped out that night. His scroll vibrated again in his pocket, and his hand stepped down to silence it. Would a dependable person do that? He knew the answer. It burned in his throat like a living flame. His shoulders hunched inwards as he grit his teeth. And still, Port prated on, a true huntsman must be strategic, well-educated, and wise. Each word was a physical blow to John's spirit now, shaking him to his core. Strategy? What strategy? Go to Beacon, become a huntsman. That was his strategy. He had next to no education to speak of, because what he had been taught, and he'd used that to fake his way into Beacon. Wisdom? What wisdom? He was good at smashing things. That was it. Power saw it and frowned. John, are you all right? He refused to meet her gaze, afraid of what she might find there. I'm fine. No, Kerma sounded strangely smug. You're not, like father, like son, it seems. Hey, I thought you were on my side. I am. And what are you going to do? Are you going to sit there and take it? Or will you prove yourself? He knew he was lacking. He knew he had no right to be here. He knew that, all of it, every bit of it, and yet despite all that he wanted to try, he wanted to prove that he could be worthy of those things, that he could step out from his father's shadow and that of his sisters, to make something of himself in the wider world. He wasn't much now, but he would become someone. Now, Port preened, who among you believe themselves to be the embodiment of these traits? There was a silence. No one? I understand we have some transfers from Mistral among us today. He thumbed his chin as he looked at the rows above them. Perhaps one of them would care to volunteer. John's fist punched into the air at high speeds, creating an audible shockwave, cut him short, and left half the class jolting in their seats. I'll do it, sir. I do, sir, a voice echoed him. Wait, what now? Who in blazes said that? He rolled, alarmed to find Weiss had raised her palm as well. A murmur passed through the class as she whirled in her seat to face him. She looked just as shocked to see that he'd volunteered himself. The feeling was mutual. Ice blue orbs looked onto Sapphire, then higher, fixing upon his arm. Her lips parted, mouthing three words. Drop your hand. Not a chance. John squared his shoulders and kept his arm in the air, refusing to relent. She didn't understand what this meant to him. Port had all but challenged him. Even if those words had been directed at him, they had pricked his conscience all the same. He had to do this. He needed to do this. He must do this. We slammed her free hand against the desk. Drop it, you oaf! I was first. A pearl of defiance coalesced in his chest. I'm sorry, I can't do that. Sparks flew between them. Kerma sniffed proudly. Ah, young love makes an old fox feel proud. What about this is love? Weiss burst to her feet. Lower your arm, or so help me, you will rule. Oh ho! Port's booming laugh cut her whatever she might have said. I'm afraid young Ark beat you to it, Miss Schnee. You were a hair too slow. The Schnee in question balked, but his decision was made. Now then, he turned to face him, mustache a quiver with delight. John, was it? He swept an arm forth. By all means, come test your might. We subsided with a scowl. John recoiled. You want me to fight you? Wasn't that a little too much to ask for on the first day? Not at all. There was a shadow to Port's smile now, one that hadn't been there before. After all, a sprying young lad such as you wouldn't stand a chance against an experienced huntsman like myself. He thumbed his chin and tilted his head just so, eyes cracking open beneath his bushy brow. Or would you? It was like a flipping a switch. For a moment, just a moment, the foolish facade fell, and John glimpsed something beneath. Cold black eyes gazed back at him, hard as steel, yet still that the smile persisted. John wasn't sure he liked what he saw in those depths. It reminded him of Dad, and not in the good way. There was just something about those eyes. I take back what I said earlier, Kurma drawled. That old coot's more than he appears. Don't let your guard down. Now then, Port clapped his hands one on once, and the mask slipped back into place. Don't just stand there. Step forward and face your opponent. Pyra patted his arm, causing him to half walk slash half stumble down the steps. Fight well. Huh? Nora snapped, awake, head on a swivel. Did someone say fight? Nora, no. Ren tugged her back down. John's fighting, not you. Ah, boo! She scowled, but only for a moment. Kick some ass, John! Pride burst to life in John's chest, quelling the brief flicker of fear he'd felt. It was such a little thing, but it warmed his spirit all the same. He had other reasons to fight now, didn't he? It wasn't all about him. He was the leader. Time to act like one. He flashed them a nervous smile and scurried down the rest of the way. Porter quirked a brow at him. Won't you be needing your weapons and armor? Nope. John rolled his shoulders. I'm good. The man's brow climbed higher. You intend to face a Grim unarmed with your bare hands? Well, yeah. He'd seen huntsmen beat Grim with their bare hands all the time on television. Is that a problem? John, those were movies. The blonde blinked. And? You know what? Knock yourself out, kid. As you wish. Port clamped him on the back. Bring out the beast. In short order, his assistant brought a heavy cage forth and planted it before them. John couldn't help but grimace at the sight of the prison. It was an awful iron-shod thing, bolted together by rivets and heavy metal alike. John didn't need his senses to know what lurked within. Even a blind man could see it, hear it, smell it. There was a Grim in there, all right, although judging by the rattling and the angry, beady red eyes, it wouldn't be there for long. All right, he settled into a loose stance and brought a single hand to bear, fingers clenched into a claw. You've killed Grim before, and you can kill this one. Just be quick about it. 100 Leon says you can't kill it in 10 seconds. His pride ranked. Cheeky furball. Kick some butt, Johnny! He looked back in time to see Nora all but burst from her seat. She flung an arm slung round Ren's shoulders as she cheered. Pyra met his eyes and nodded once. It was all the encouragement he needed, but yet more came. Go, John! He felt a grin steal across his face. When Ruby hollered his name, against his better judgment, his head swiveled. Yang pumped a fist into the air. Knock him dead, killer! Blake waved a tiny flag on sufferance. We well, she looked like she wanted to stake him with Mertonaster, but he was beginning to expect that sort of thing. Thankfully, she didn't have it handy at the moment. Really, what was her problem with him? Even to his senses, she was a tangled knot of emotions. There could be time enough to figure that out later. For now, he had a duel to win. Now then, poor Tither merely, time to see what you're capable of. Let the match. His blunderbuss swung up, bringing its bladed edge to bear. Begin! A singular swipe of his axe severed the lock, to which the beast barreled out in a blur of black and white. All the world faded away. There was only hunter and prey. Instinct seized the reins, and he dodged aside, letting it careen harmlessly past. It tried to twist and catch him on its spines as it hurtled by, only to meet empty air as he kicked off its back. The beast crashed into a wall and caught itself on a desk, earning him a brief reprieve. Only when he landed did he get a good look at his foe. 4 red eyes, curved tusks, and wickedly sharp teeth, a boar tusk, and a juvenile one at that. Any lingering concern or fear he might have held felt burned away like ashen cinders on the wind. Was this it? He'd thought Port's test might be dangerous, even lethal, but this he'd seen and slain bigger in the forest of Ansel. The youngest of his sisters could kill this creature with both arms tied behind her arm. For him, are you cracked? We shouted at him, nearly shattering his concentration. You can't defeat that thing without a weapon, you dunce! You'll die! A muscle jumped in John's jaw. Not good enough, not strong enough. Who decided that? Kerma. What now? You don't need my help for this. No, he wouldn't accept it if you offered. It's normal to win, right? With the pause passed between them, then he felt the odd Kitsune grin. Undoubtedly. Well, all right then, that simplified things, didn't it? John closed his eyes as the Borbotusca righted itself and rushed him. He stood perfectly still before its charge. Blue eyes flickered beneath his eyelids, shimmering a faint orange as he drew energy inwards. Sage chakra coursing through his veins, and they snapped open again. Gasps arose from the audience. He knew to an observer his eyes were now a molten shade of gold. Maybe it was his mood, but he just couldn't help himself. All the world bled away just this once. He didn't want to be average. He wanted to win. For a moment, just a moment, he tried. Remember, son, Naruto's words came back to him. Sage mode is one thing, but this technique is like the Rasen Shuriken. You can never use it on a normal person. You'll kill them. He caught the ghost of his father's grin. Of course, grim are fair play. A true warrior strikes only when needed, and only once. John exhaled sharply and planted his right foot. The left stamped down, cratering the ground with ease. The Borbertust crashed into that rigid limb and recoiled. It physically bounced off his aura. Unable to move him, it hesitated and shuffled back, pawing at the ground as it tried to understand the reason for this sudden rebuttal. That hesitation cost the creature its life. His right hand burst forwards and upwards, seeking the beast's skull with little force. Chakra and aura burned through his body in a beautiful blend of death. There was no second strike, for none was needed. Bone and darkness shattered beneath John's fist. A pained squeal greeted his ears as his prey careened backwards, hurtled past Port and struck the wall, not an inch from the man's face, and drilled through it, leaving a misty tear in the plaster. The professor didn't bat an eyelash at it at all, even when the decaying remains slid down the wall and became so much mist. Yang whistled somewhere behind him. Hot damn, Goldilocks got moves. John whirled without thinking, his body responding to her voice. Golden eyes met half-lidded lilac. Her grin looked hungry. Uh-oh. Bravo! Porter broke the spell with did a hearty slap on the back. Bravo! It appears we are indeed in the presence of a true huntsman in training. Wherever did you learn such an impressive move? John's throat closed. Deny, deflect. Oh, you know, here and there. No need to be shy. Was it a semblance of some sort? He felt the eyes of the class upon him, weighing him down like a physical force. You might say that. The bell rang at that very moment, sparing him an immagnable fate. Well, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today. I suppose we can fix this conversation another time. He stroked his mustache with a grimace. Be sure to cover the assigned readings, and remember that greedy, fuzzy caterpillar of a mustache twitched once. Stay vigilant. Class dismissed. Off to lunch you go. John exhaled and let go of the chakra he'd accumulated, leaving his eyes to shimmer back into their true blue. As he did, Whis caught his eye. What John found there baffled his even more, because, you see, her face had gone blank, almost eerily so. Wintry eyes fluttered back to him in a slow blink. Once, twice, thrice, a curious expression settled over her pale features. Not anger, not scorn, but confusion. Whis looked at him like he'd grown another head. Well, it was better than scowling. He raised his hand. Hey, so are we good? She tossed her head to one side and stormed out in a huff. Ruby raced out after her. Right, that settled it. Girls made no sense. Sheesh, what's with them? Someone slipped by, distracting him before he could follow. She smelled of ash and fire. Impressive! Her voice was a low murmur for his ears alone. Most impressive. I wonder what else you're capable of? John balked. Who are you? All in due time. Her hand ghosted across his chest, snagged upwards, and caught him by the chin. "I'll be keeping an eye on you." She released him and stepped away into the crowd. He had time enough to glimpse the dark ebony hair, golden eyes, and full lips curled in a sinful smile. Then she was gone, swept up in the teeming mass of students. Her scent lingered. He shivered a little, and not in a good way. His skin felt odd where she'd touched him, not quite a burn, just uncomfortably warm. Strange girl, where she'd touched him, not quite warm, but not altogether pleasant either. I wouldn't trust that one. She smells of fire. Everyone descended upon him before he could hope to heed that warning. Nora hit him first, crashing onto his back like a lemur, nearly driving him into a wall. "That was awesome!" She all but smashed into his side, grinning from ear to ear as a child might when they found a new toy. "You're all zap, pow, bang, and then the grim just went bam!" Ran pried the energetic girl off him. "I believe you impressed her," she flailed at him. "That's what I said, duh!" Now, Pyra proved his salvation when she tugged him away. "Let's give our leader some space." "You're smothering him." A fresh surge of heat suffused John's cheeks, and not at all from pride. He'd definitely overdone it with that display. He understood that now. There could be no denying his deed, nor could he hope to hide it after that display. Thankfully, everyone seemed to have written off as a semblance for now. Thank the law for small blessings. So long as he didn't do anything truly reckless or use any of the truly dangerous jutsu he'd been blessed with, he might be able to pass it off as just that. This from the boy who can't lie to save his life. Nonsense. "I'm nothing special," he muttered harshly. "Really, I'm not." Para patted his arm, strangely sympathetic to his plight. "Just the normal guy, right?" "Exactly, as expected of my partner." John rounded on her, clasping both her hands within his. "I knew you'd understand." That was precisely it. Yes, she understood. Normality. It was so nice to have a partner who knew what he was aiming for. Wait, why was her face red? It really was a nice color. Matched her hair perfectly and everything. "You all right there, Para?" He took one hand from hers and touched it to her forehead. "You're looking awfully red." Pyra made happy noises. Credit where it was due. She didn't faint, though she did babble a little. John, this is a little too sudden." John looked down at their interlocked hands, back to Pyra, down to their hands again. Realization dawned. "Oh," Kurma grinned. My, hand holding already. Whatever will your mother say?" Reverse course. John jerked back with a start, all but ripping his arms from Pyra's. "I'm sorry." John caught Yang caught his other arm before he could escape. "Pretty sure that's her line, Goldilocks." "So!" The blonde brawler slung an arm around his shoulders, so furthering entrapping him. "I'm thinking you deserve a new nickname after the stunt in class." "How's One Punch Man sound?" Or John wheezed a little as he died on the inside. "Pretty sure that one's already been taken and copyrighted." "Nonsense." Para tugged him the other way. "John is John. He doesn't need a nickname like that." "If you'll excuse me." Blake walked by with a sigh, wise enough to stay out of it. Lunch awaits. So began John's first day of Beacon. His troubles, well, those had only just begun. Only a few hours in, and already his head was already spinning. "Dad, girls are scary and confusing. Help!"